Hello darlings, I hope you're all well. I'm in my garden, nice bird sounds, I thought it could be a nice change. Not the flies. I wanted to talk about catastrophizing, and I don't have a script or anything. I'll give you some examples of how catastrophizing shows up in my life. I'm in bed, I've just woken up. My mum's about to take the dog for a walk. I hear her close the door and my dog barks a lot, so she starts barking and then she stops barking, and I've only just woken up and my brain will convince myself that she's just been hit by a car because she stopped barking and she's outside, and I just assumed she wasn't on the lead. I just literally convinced myself she died, so I was calling my mum. Is Lila alive? It's just your brain almost like makes up the worst case scenario in a way to like protect itself. It ends up not protecting yourself because then you actually convince yourself that these things are real when they're not, and then you start being a crazy
Go stupid, go crazy, a little bit.
If my boyfriend's phone is off or he's on his way to my house, something about my brain might convince myself that he's just been hit by a car. I don't know why I think this. Your brain just might assume something awful's happened, like someone's died, so that if something like that were to happen, we'd be prepared. So here's where we could out crazy our brain. Imagine you're going to a art class, you have to present your work. You might catastrophize and imagine you're gonna stumble your words, you're gonna fall over, you're imagining like something really bad happening. Instead of doing that, loads of munchkins just ate my work. Out crazy your brain. Or you could combat those thoughts with very, very logical and rational thoughts. If you're like stressed about doing a presentation, you could just imagine it going perfectly. You might do your makeup in a way you like, or wear an outfit you like. Do the opposite of catastrophizing. I'd say specifically people with BPD, we're very likely to catastrophize. It's basically a tendency to think about a horrible situation, thinking about the negative implications that will have on your future. Imagine you have just catastrophized and assumed your dog died. You then go in the mode of like grieving, and you kind of imagine what that will be like, or you think your boyfriend's dead, your best friend's dead. Like, it's so dumb that your thoughts can go that far, but when we're worried, catastrophizing just takes over, and it feels like an emergency. It feels like in the moment where you're catastrophizing, it feels very real. You feel like this urgent feeling of fear. I think it's like a very relevant part of BPD. I think we all catastrophize. Also, just a massive part of anxiety and stuff like that. And catastrophizing is also seen as overreacting, but we don't mean to. We're not trying to be dramatic. When we assume the worst, we can start to believe that that thing has happened. We might characterize a minor problem and turn it into someone's in a car accident. I think there's a misconception that a lot of people catastrophize for attention, as a way to manipulate. Come here. What's this? Come here. So yeah, I can see why catastrophizing could be seen as attention-seeking or manipulative. I can see how someone could use it to their advantage, but for me, and I guarantee lots of other people, we aren't doing it for attention, we're not doing it to be like, manipulate as a squirrel. And I think it is like an anxiety response. If you're dealing with a loved one who catastrophizes a lot, don't join in on their panic. If you yourself are dealing with catastrophizing thoughts, try and like combat it with logical thoughts, as well as doing the thing where you like out crazy your brain. That spell in Harry Potter.
Ridiculous!
Kind of reminds me of that. Don't go into crisis mode just because your brain's being silly. Catastrophizing is actually a symptom of emotional distress in itself. If people are catastrophizing and you have a loved one who's catastrophizing all the time, that sounds so draining, and don't indulge in their catastrophizing. Catastrophizing and being depressed, depression in itself is addictive. Stop catastrophizing. We need to either be as logical as we can and think about all the possible scenarios that could be happening. Calm down the monkey brain. If you're going the monkey brain route, take it further and out crazy your brain. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Dad.
Dad.
Toby. I do it quite often. Quite often when I think about catastrophes, I think this is a bit macabre, but when I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back, am I going to give a shit about this? And I'm thinking, no way. It's really not important, and it was probably nonsense anyway.
And just be like, this won't matter when I'm old.
You can edit that bit out, don't worry.
I like Yeah.
If you catastrophize, you might get it from me, actually. And also, quite often, it's like, have you had too much caffeine? Have you got yourself going? Has your heart been going? And then you can get yourself in a bit of a state.
Are you eating enough? Are you
Distract
doing
yourself.
Drugs?
Go and read a fantastic book for 10 minutes and lose yourself in something else. You'll suddenly realise, like, half an hour later, actually, that wasn't that stressful after all. It just seemed it. When you're in the vortex. I get that quite a bit.
Cheers to that, love.
Another thing that's interesting with catastrophizing is that you can get sucked into other people's potential catastrophe. So sometimes I get emails from people who are maybe being a little bit aggressive, and then the stress levels rise up and I join it. And it's really calming to go back really peacefully and don't go towards the catastrophe. It's actually quite nice to feel yourself be the calm one in a situation. You know, the easy thing is to go with it. It's tougher mentally, isn't it, just to take a breath.
And it builds up a sense of self when you actually have opinions.
That's true. As a parent, that can happen. And one of them's out really late. Probably wouldn't be you. And, you know, you're wondering what's going on. Yeah, that can happen. If that person's an adult, you have to try and relax and say, hold on, they're on their own journey.
I think distractions is a big one, like to let go and just think there's lots of possible outcomes.
Like sometimes you can catastrophize about a sort of everyday event. I was doing a lecture to 60 people and I was thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And then as I was thinking about all the things that go wrong, I actually got really stressed. But actually, when I did this particular lecture, absolutely everything went wrong. The technology all failed, and then suddenly I had to stand up without the technology. And even though everything went wrong, it was still much better than what I feared. But as it happened, it meant that I could sort of like go face to face more and interact more. You know, the reality is never usually as bad as the fear. So goodbye.
Bye bye.
Nice to meet you.
Supportive icon. I'd say that's about all we have to bring to the table today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of it. Hope you have a good weekend.